Classic Restos is proudly brought to you by Shannons Insurance, where you can be a member of the Shannons Club. Pace Farm, the enjoyable egg. Hare and Forbes Machinery House. And Gun Lake Quarries. It's always worth a drive out into the country looking for stuff. And today, about 30 minutes from Murrumbateman, New South Wales, the instructions were to look for a big green shed. And that's it over there. So let's go check it out in this week's Classic Restos on the road. This incredibly beautiful property belonging to Ron and Gail holds a lot of inner peace. And let me tell you that that building over there holds plenty of inner peace as well. Have a go at that. That is not a shed. That is a museum. Having a collection of classic vehicles is one thing, but when historic diversity cuts in at a high level, collective appeal can soon run riot. Here, Ron has collected now over 30 years, from farm machinery, old Bowsers that used to fuel our machines, a big block Chev V8 on a stand, why not? There's signs from yesteryear that most of us have missed out on, but summing it up here is hard, as a plethora of eclectic items drops the enthusiast's jaw as soon as you walk through the door. Now Ron, well, he's a bit of a shy bloke, but here's just a few words about his amazing collection.
Well, this shed was built 2 years ago, and I filled it with all the stuff from another shed out in the country. Oh, well, I come from a machinery and farming background, so it always interested me. It's all my favourites. Just gives me something to work on and get a reason to get up in the morning. If I find something, it finds me. So it's all good, yeah. There's some mates here with cars, so they're not all my cars. So, well, it's a bar. That's where you have a drink. Bit of tell a few lies there and whatever, you know.
Making our way through this colossal shed of Ron's, we're lucky enough to have Mark, Ron's son. How you doing, Mark?
Oh, I'm all right, Fletch.
That's good, Mum. Glad you took after your mum when it comes to having a chat.
Oh, yeah, I don't know about that, but I'll give it my best go.
Okay, time to talk about some cars. The black 56 Ford Victoria. Sitting there like that, Mark, what a machine.
Oh, it's a nice bit of gear. The one of our mates in Albury actually built this car, and he's the custom line man. Had everything done to it, from powder coated chassis to drivetrain, everything. Beautiful car.
Mark, even the pearl steering wheel, just beautiful in contrast with that dash.
Yeah, well, that's all the original style stuff, just sort of been redone and put back together. That sort of tried to keep all the same sort of deal with it. Just pulled a few badges off it, and that's the way they came out.
Look, the bright work looks beautiful against the black. It's a two-door car. Looks tough the way it sits. A little bit lowered. Just got a really great stance about it. Now, mechanically, there's been a few changes under the hood. What's going on there, Mark?
Oh, it's had a like an XR8 Tickford type motor setup put in it, and just for a bit of reliability, you know. So.
The condition of the car, it seems outstanding, Mark, in terms of history and who had the car many years ago. It doesn't look like it's had a hard life, but do you know what it was like before the restoration?
It was an original black. They told us that it was like a police type delivery one, but it came out of the States. It was still a left-hand drive, and then he's converted it over with the Australian custom line stuff, but apparently it was some sort of police special type thing.
All right, Mark, moving on through. Car in front of us here. Roadster, 1914, 1916 Ford.
Yeah, T-model Speedster. Been chopped and changed a little. It's got front guards. They've put them on the back to sort of give it that little short look. Apparently there's a bit of motor work done. An A-model crank in a T-model block or something like that. I don't know a great deal about it, but he acquired this car by, he had a whole cabinet of old antique locks that he'd had for when I was only a kid. He's been collecting for years. And because he has a few people come through the shed and have a look, this bloke's came and he's gone, I like the locks, and then they've done a deal. So they've done a straight swap with this. So he's acquired this car through the years of collecting locks.
It's interesting that the car's so old, yet so many little modifications, I guess period correct modifications have been done. It makes sense too because it's got steel wire wheels. Well, originally it would have had timber spokes too.
Yeah, that's right. And they've used early guards, but it looks like they've made a whole new hood and radiator surround, and all this cowl panels all been fabricated up, and probably what they would have done in the old days, I suppose. And
Now, Mark, you said earlier this is a triple A. I don't know about being a triple A.
Nah, I was mistaken. It was
Double A.
Double AH.
You're thinking of batteries, mate.
Yeah, I was. But yeah, this is an old 28, 29 A model-y type truck.
Where's he get these things from?
Oh, look, I don't know. People come and then they've got, I've got an old truck, and then it just sort of, it works its way to him. I don't know how, but it does. But apparently when these were bought brand new, this is how they were sort of bought. There's no cab or anything on them, and then you just build your own cab.
Yeah, rolling chassis.
Yeah, just a rolling chassis just a sort of this as a unit. These jacks, they're an interesting.
Yeah, okay. Explain the situation, how they work, Mark.
So apparently in Canada, where it freezes over, you'd store your car away out of the cold and out of the snow, and what you'd do is you had 4 of these, and you'd jack it up off the ground so your tyres didn't get perished and buggered through the snow and the cold.
Wow. So they just they'd freeze while they were suspended.
Yeah, well they're probably cold, but they're not got no weight sitting on them. But yeah, apparently that's what they're for when you store them away. But
The innovative ideas were around back then.
oh yeah, they had some ideas.
I was 16 when I first saw her. Loved her utterly. She was so sweet, so perfect. Still is. She's got a whopping great 2-stroke engine under that gorgeous aerodynamic body. Insurance? Well, Shannons, of course.
No one knows your passion like Shannons. That's why we offer special limited usage rates and even club plate cover. So call Shannons on 13 46 46. Shannons, insurance for motoring enthusiasts.
Hare & Forbes Machinery House has been family owned and operated for over 85 years, and it's easy to see why. Planning on welding? Look at these welding tables and clamps, air compressors and different air tools, sandblasting cabinets, through to spray guns. Everyone is welcome at Machinery House. There are competitive freight rates around Australia, and you can buy online at machineryhouse.com.au. So remember, Hare & Forbes has the range. Mark, how cool is this? An original 1929 Ford truck from Lismore.
Yeah, an old timber Jinker.
Geez, they worked hard up there around the timbers, didn't they? The way they used to overload them.
Yeah, well, they bought this one brand new, and this replaced the old, when they used to use the old horses dragging them out of the hill. So they'd put a big log on the back, and then they'd drag it out through with this. So this is a bit of a heavier spec than the last one we looked at. But it's got the solid wheels, the Joey box for lower gearing, and he's got
good technology for 1929 when you think about that. When you start talking about the Joey box, give it a few more cogs to play with.
Yeah, look, they were fairly innovative in their what they'd done, and I guess it was a lot nicer using one of these than a horse.
Well, at least when there was a storm the night before, the truck didn't bolt out through the door of the barn.
Nah, it probably was where you left it, I'd say, if it wasn't bogged in the paddock.
Just interesting back to how hard these vehicles worked, and in reference to their simplicity. In the middle of summer, being overloaded, but they did, and they worked.
Well, I think back in the day they done what they had to do. They were probably a little bit harder than all us. You know, if the thing was boiling, they'd just wait and fix it and do what they had to do, like while they were out in the field. But
You couldn't do that now because of time restraints.
well, that's right. Everyone's in a hurry, and half the time you got to plug a computer into a car these days to get it to run. But this pretty straightforward. I think they saved them a lot of time back in the day, and yeah.
It's a beautiful example, Mark. Now, the condition of it, it's had looks like a partial resto a while ago. What can you tell us on that?
Yeah, when Dad got it, I think he got 2 chassis and then a fair bit of bits and parts. So what had happened, I guess, over the time, it had sat up there in the side of the hill there, and they'd left it and moved on to newer technology, and he ended up getting it, and he got a heap of parts. So he's had the guards done and the chassis painted and got the running gear sorted out and painted it up roughly and put it back together. They were, even from new, they were never really quite pristine. But
They were just designed for work. That's the only reason they were made. I think it's also extraordinary here too, Mark, that your dad's got the original sales receipt when the truck was new, and those photos, that's actually this truck working.
yeah, that's this truck with the big logs on the thing. They drag it out of the hill and come down to the sawmill and chop it all up. And yeah, that's this truck and those dockets. So yeah, bit of history.
Mark, I know you've got to get away, mate. Thank you very much for your time today. Now, on last week's show, we had the pleasure of catching up with you at Shane's place there at Murrumbateman Mechanical and Tyres with that glorious 39 truck of yours, and for you to travel out to your dad's place for this week's show to help out with the interviews here in this incredible museum. We really appreciate that. Mark, thanks for being a part of it.
Not a problem, Fletch. It's been it's been good.
Cheers, mate.
Thanks, mate.
Moving through this wonderful episode, another friend of Ron, we have Jack. How are you?
Good, Fletch. What about you, champion?
Good, mate, good. Thanks for coming along.
No, my pleasure, my pleasure.
Now, you know a little bit about the bikes.
Yes, a little bit. Not a lot, but enough.
What we have here, this is incredible. I love this. This is your old push bike with a 2-stroke engine on it, 1939. Yes. But what's really surprised me, Jack, is how featured this bike is.
Oh, for sure. It's got heaps of features on it. If it runs out of petrol, you can still pedal it.
There you go.
You can push start it.
Yeah.
It's got 9 pints in the fuel tank, 2-stroke.
9 pints in the tank, 9 pints back in the day, possibly in the rider too.
Oh, probably. More in the rider than in the bike, I'd say.
Now, on that note, with the 9 pints, 100 miles in distance that the bike could go on the tank. And as you said, the beautiful thing about that is if you lived 110 miles, you just pedalled the rest of the way.
Yeah, best to do 5 before you start and 5 at the end.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Otherwise, you don't want to burn yourself out doing the last 10.
Right.
Yeah. So it's got lots of good features. It's got drum brakes on the front, and almost a disc back pedal brake on the back.
We're talking 1939 here, and it's a push bike, essentially with a 2-stroke engine on it. So, yeah, this is a pretty incredible thing. Now, we have the Dynamo that we're familiar with, that was around for years and years to run the headlight in the front there. Of course, the bell on the handlebar. Yeah. But all the levers, now, we've got a decompression lever there, that's correct?
Decompression lever here to make it easy to start, especially after the 6 points in the rider.
Absolutely.
And
in the rider. In the rider.
So that helps start that to get the whole thing going, and then once that goes, you let that off, and away you go.
We also look at this little 2-stroke engine down here, Jack, and that's an interesting little device too, because the flywheel is the drum in the front. Yeah,
it's a magneto flywheel, and that provides a spark for the engine, for the old plug to go bang, bang, bang.
Yeah. And pop.
Oh,
well, Pop, he was on the back.
He's on the back, yeah. And so it's got the choke little lever there, it's got the accelerator on that side. Little bell.
The choke's interesting. It's straight up off the top of the carby and mounted on the frame there. So that's an interesting little wire ring there to grab hold of.
That just pulls the venturi close. Yeah.
Also, suspension in the front is interesting too. They could have just gone solid mount here, but no, they put a spring in. Yeah.
This is a cantilever, just up and down. It's a bit like a shock absorber, but it's mechanical.
Not only do you have a bit of spring in your step, you've got a bit of spring right under your bum because of these two springs here in that beautifully... That's
leather. That's the original leather from 1939.
I know, it feels like
I
it.
think the cow's not around, but its hide's there.
Not only did the cow have a hide, it literally did here because that feels like the cow's hide. It is.
It is the cow's hide, mate. It is.
And the crowning jewel of this motorised push bike that at any moment could literally take off on you and end up upside down in a ditch is twin exhausts. And they actually do look good. These are really, really neat, aren't they?
They're very neat. Look at the little pea pipes they are. Beautiful.
Jack, thanks for your time here this afternoon. Having a bit of fun with this 1939 bike, which is truly, I believe, fantastic, as I mentioned earlier, with how many features that this thing had. And of course, we don't have to say how rare this particular bike is.
Very, very rare. It's probably the only one around in this condition. This is as it was when it came off the factory floor, non-restored. Yep. Non-restored. It was going a couple of years ago, but it needs a bit of tender love.
And talking to Ron's wife Gail earlier, even she said it's only original once. And what do you do with something like this? Do you restore it, or keep it like this? And we hear the word patina a lot. Well, there's a whole heap here.
There's a whole heap here. But look, this bike, couple of new tyres and a bit of lube and a bit of WD-40.
Then you can retire.
And a bit of Shannons insurance, you can take it anywhere.
Yep. And
take it anywhere. And retire. And retire.
Good on you, Jack.
Good on you,
mate. Years ago, BSA built more bikes than anyone in the world. Beautiful, handcrafted, proper works of art. Real enthusiasts understand. And Shannons, of course. Young mixed passions, a bit high-tech for me, but deep down, it's the same. And Shannons understand that as well. Which is why Shannons insure our bikes, cars, and now, even our home.
Call Shannons on 13 46 46. Shannons, insurance for motoring enthusiasts.
If you have a classic bike, a classic car, or a classic truck, make sure it's insured with Shannons. Why not pick up the phone and give Shannons a call for a quote and a chat on 134646, and the Shannons Club awaits you. For more information, visit shannons.com.au. Moving through Ron's shed, now in the oil engine division. How you doing, Brock?
Yeah, good, Fletch. How's yourself?
Good, mate. Good. Thanks for hanging around.
No, that's no problem, mate.
These mean a lot to you, these engines. You know a lot about them, I believe.
Yeah, I've been playing with old engines for a bit over 30 years. My father sort of started in them originally, then I got into it, and yeah, so...
They've always fascinated me, Brock. The first thing that comes to mind when you see one running, you look over and you see the cam lobes, the camshaft, and that technology. We're still using that today in our engines.
Yeah, well, that's right, Fletch. The engineering side of things hasn't really changed. Over the years, like today, modern cars have still got a camshaft, they've still got piston, crankshaft, flywheel, etc., and a source of ignition. So, yes, they've improved things, made them rev a lot harder, that sort of thing. But as far as what's in this engine here is what's in a 2021 Toyota Land Cruiser, for instance, something like that, you know. So nothing's really changed.
What is it like with tolerances in terms of we look at gap between cam lobes, open and close? Is there a lot of lash going on?
You can get away with a fair bit with these. They don't have to, there's not really any sort of setting. There is a few marks, you sort of set them at roughly, and they're very forgiving, the old engines. Yeah.
It's interesting when you look at the ramping of the cam lobe and how much duration and lift there is. And that's something that hasn't changed either.
No, that's right. You know, you still got the same amount of movement, and yeah, the lobes, yeah, they do get a bit of wear. Some of them, especially when they've been driving shaft cutters from like early days, they seem to wear the cam a bit, but it doesn't worry them. Yeah.
In terms of its life, how long could one of these engines operate? Like bought brand new back in the day, put into application, how many years was there a typical lifespan that they'd work on average?
Well, some of the American engines were sort of 20, 30 year lifespan, and some companies that sort of didn't make the parts as good as they should have been, and vice versa. Like this engine here, for instance, It's 1907, and it's virtually hasn't had anything done to it since day one. It drove a shearing shed at Bookham for many, many years, and yeah, it's just had a bit of a clean up. Nothing major been done to it. Still got the original rings in it. The rings could be original, I'm not really 100% sure, but the bearings are good, everything's good in it, and yeah.
I guess it's a fairly open question too in terms of lifespan. Every engine would have been put into, I guess, well, similar applications, but some would have obviously worked harder than others as well.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, some engine driving a shearing shed or driving a pump, shaft cutter. But also too, sometimes the farmer wasn't real good with the oil can on some engines. You'll see an engine where they hadn't oiled it or greased it very much over the years and everything's worn to buggery. Where you see another engine where the farmer's sort of taken care of it and oiled everything up over the years, and the engine's still in pristine condition, 110, 115 years later.
We see these flywheels spinning around. What sort of force are we looking at these RPMs, Brock?
Well, sort of compare it. This engine's only a 5 horsepower, but when it drove the shearing shed, like it would have been, say, probably a 4 or 5 stand shed, but to replace that now, like if that shed was still in operation and you had to get a new engine, you'd have to probably get a 40 to 50 horsepower small industrial engine to do the same job that this done.
Isn't that amazing? Just goes to show that it's not always about horsepower. Torque is the major factor.
Yeah, absolutely. And once you get the flywheels rolling, they just keep rolling, and the momentum just keeps them rolling. And
well, that's right. And where do we get the torque from? Huge stroke, single cylinder, huge bore, massive stroke. Without doubt, incredible engineering. Now, Brock, in Ron's shed here, there's a few of these getting around. Have you got a personal favourite?
Yeah, probably a couple of engines that I own that are in Ronnie's shed here. That sort of it looks after for me. I've got my white gasoline engine here. It's 1895 to 1898. There's only 3.5 of them known in Australia. They were built in America, and there's next to none in the USA. When I got my vertical white, it was an absolute wreck. Had to sort of start from scratch, build everything for it. And yeah, I restored it about 15 years ago, I think.
I just can't believe how smooth these things run. They are whisper quiet. And we've had a few opportunities over the years with Classic Restos to go to steam events and what have you. And Steve Moore with the Geelong Steam Festival is a good one every January. And we've been into that shed there many times and seen the stationary engines. Another one at Menangle, just south of Campbelltown in New South Wales. And as I said earlier, they never cease to amaze me. And again, so quiet in operation. We see those journals moving around, and you've really got to listen for any sort of sound whatsoever.
Yeah, absolutely. A lot of the engines are very silent. They don't sort of make much of a noise. And it's also too the way you set them up. Like if you haven't got the timing quite right, they'll bark and carry on. They won't run 100%. So you play with them, fiddle with them. I won't be happy with the engine until I get it running 100% how I want it to run. Yeah. This is one of my favourite engines. It's a white gasoline engine built in the United States between 1895 and 1898. When I got it, all the governor was missing, side shaft, the carburettor had to make all that from casting stuff from scratch. And over a period of 12 to 18 months, I virtually built the engine back to its original condition, running condition, and it's probably one of my favourite engines I've got. And yeah, thanks.
Brock, I do look forward to seeing you out and about down the track at one of the steam shows, no doubt.
Yeah, absolutely, Fletch. Should be great to catch up again.
Good on you, mate, and I appreciate your time here today. And really nice chatting, mate.
You too. Thank you.
Well, I hope you've really enjoyed this week's episode of Classic Restos, filming here in Ron's shed. And I'd like to thank Mark for his interviewing time, and then Jack for his, and then rounding off with Brock with those fantastic oil machines. And as for Ron, I think he's still over at the bar. But until next week, no matter where you're watching Classic Restos from, please ride and drive safe. I'm Fletch, and I thank you very much for watching. You can like and follow us on Facebook at facebook.com/Classic Restos TV and watch catch-up episodes at shannons.com.au. Classic Restos is proudly brought to you by Shannons Insurance, where you can be a member of the Shannons Club. Pace Farm, the enjoyable egg. Hare and Forbes Machinery House. And Gun Lake Quarries.